College Football 25 has officially been out for 1 month, and today I'm going to give my official review of the video game. I was waiting for that first title update to drop, and it did, and it fixed a lot of the issues with this game. It also added a bunch of new bugs to the game, unfortunately. So I think now is time to finally give my review of this game now that I've been playing it for 1 month and a week. I'm going to split this video up into the good, the mid, and the bad. So 3 different sections, and we're going to go from the best of this video game down to the worst of this video game. All right, so let's start with the good section. I'm immediately going to put gameplay in this section. I think gameplay is very good. When I first got the game and I was playing the gameplay and trying to figure out all the new mechanics, at first I honestly kind of hated it, which is funny because now I'm really enjoying it. Once I got used to all the different things, like I've been playing an 11-year-old game, obviously. I've been playing NCAA 14 for 11 years. You get stuck playing with that game, playing with those mechanics, with how that works. So when you hop into a modern gen college football game, this is the first modern gen only football game. Like even Madden is still on Xbox One and PS4. So this game plays significantly different than previous football games, and so it took me a while to get used to. But now that I am used to it, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's very fun, it's fast, it's responsive. I feel like I have control over my players. The catching animations are awesome. I think the tackling animations for the most part are awesome. It just is a very fun game to play. Is the gameplay perfect? Definitely not. I mean, there's definitely issues with it. I think the offensive line blocking is my #1 issue with the game, and that's going to be in the bad section once we get to it. But overall, the gameplay is good. I think if they just tweaked the O-line blocking, I would be like giving this an A+ for the gameplay. I think my favorite thing about the gameplay is the new passing mechanics. I love being able to layer the ball. That wasn't a lie that they talked about, trying to just market the game. You truly can. Like, you can lob this up and throw it really far down the field. You can throw a bullet over the middle. You can throw it under, do an underneath route. And I love that I can purposely throw it behind a player. So sometimes I'll kind of hold the left stick back behind the player. That way I don't lead him into the linebackers, or maybe I'm trying to lead him away from a player. So I hold the stick forward and, he has to run towards the ball. Different things like that. Using the left stick is massive, and you truly can layer the football in this game. I also enjoy the passing meter because it kind of punishes you if you hold it down too far, or if you're under pressure, you can make really bad throws, which I think is realistic, right? Like, the better the quarterback, the better the throws you can make. And if you're under pressure, you need a really good quarterback to be able to make those throws. It's more realistic, and I think that passing meter kind of adds that realism to throwing the football in College Football 25. Another feature I would put in the good section are the new abilities in this game. So in Madden, they had X Factors, but nobody really liked the X Factors because it was a guarantee that whatever that X Factor did, it was going to happen. So like, basically, the best wide receivers in the game were just guaranteed to make like stupid catches, different things like that, which isn't realistic, obviously. In College Football 25, instead, they went with abilities, and there's different tiers for these abilities, and I think it's a great addition. It separates the bad players from the good players because the good players will have abilities, whereas the bad players do not. And then on top of that, there's all the players in between, so you might have abilities, but they're bronze, whereas the best players have platinum abilities. And they aren't a guarantee like the X Factors in Madden. It's simply a situational boost. So everyone knows the 360 ability, which was like you would basically have improved spin moves, so your spin moves were better than the average player. And this got nerfed recently because it was like out of control. The Judkins spin move was just absurd. But you can see how it's not OP, especially after the nerf, but it is a good situational boost that makes your spin move better than the average player. Or maybe you have the off-platform ability, which helps quarterbacks throw the football better when they're off balance, so like off their back foot or across their body. So it gives them a situational boost in that area, but again, it's not a guarantee and it's not OP. So honestly, like all things considered in this video game, I think the abilities are like top 3 things they put in this game. They are fantastic. I think they are a great addition. They show you the difference between bad and good players, and they're not annoying and OP like they are in Madden with the X Factors. So overall, just a fantastic addition to this game. Another thing that should be mentioned in the good category are the graphics and the presentation of this video game. The stadiums in this game are awesome. I know that was like the most time-consuming thing during the production of this game, and I think it paid off because the stadiums in this game are beautiful. You can feel the atmosphere when you're in there. The stadium pulse truly does affect you when you're playing on the road at, a hostile environment. Seeing your favorite team run out onto the field in their own stadium is a super cool thing to experience. It's just a very pleasing game to look at. Again, the graphics are amazing. The animations, for the most part, are really good. So again, just like the overall visual presentation of this game is very, very good. The next thing I would put in the good category is the recruiting and dynasty mode. Is the recruiting perfect? No, there are definitely issues with it, but overall, I think it's really good. It's a good balance, I think, of immersive as well as not too time consuming. Like, it's definitely more immersive than NCAA 14, but it also doesn't take you all day to recruit, because I know some people were worried about that. And I think people like to hate on different things for just no reason, because I guess maybe it didn't live up to their expectations. But people, I think, quickly forget what we used to have, right? We were playing an 11-year-old game where all the recruits looked like they were 30, 40 years old. There were only a few different faces. The names were, there's only a few different names. There's very generic names. But in this game, like, there are so many different unique looking recruits, so many different faces, so many different names. That is massive when it comes to the immersion of the recruiting. Like, I don't want to keep recruiting the same, like, 5 different guys that look exactly the same, where they're, John Smith and James Johnson. Like, you want there to be unique names and unique faces. And there are. Like, that's a massive thing they delivered on in this game. Now, do I wish personally the recruiting was a little more in depth and actually a little more difficult? I do. I wish the recruiting was harder than it is in this game. I wish I actually had to try it a little harder to get those 4 stars at a small school. But I think it's definitely still more challenging and realistic than NCAA 14 when it came to getting 4 and 5 stars at a small school. So again, it's not perfect. This game is not perfect. I don't think there's really anything perfect in this game. That's basically impossible to make something perfect, right? But I think the recruiting is good. I think it's better than 14. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I think it's a good building block. And hopefully in CFB 26, it's even better. Next thing up in the good category is Team Builder. I am so thankful that this is back. It just completely changes the game. It takes it to a whole new level with customization. I'm going to talk about customization more in this video because overall the customization kind of sucks, but Team Builder is a massive W. I mean, if Team Builder wasn't in this game, that would be absolutely tragic because, like I said, the customization is so bad, even including Team Builder. But Team Builder in and of itself is a good thing. It allows you to add FCS teams. In fact, a lot of the FCS teams literally got a graphic designer to put them in the game, which is awesome. And then they posted it all over social media. That's super freaking cool. It also allows you to add fictional teams like Bishop Sycamore or the team I made, Gambling State, which is a play on words with Grambling State, except it has like a whole gambling theme around it. Or I've seen a lot of people make their high schools, which is also super cool. So again, Team Builder being available for this game, and now it's even available for Madden 2, that's a massive W. Last thing I'm going to include in the good section is the Road to the College Football Playoff mode. I honestly haven't played it too much myself just because I've been playing Dynasty the most, but I've dabbled in it and I've watched some people play it on YouTube, and I think that's a pretty cool new feature that they added. I mean, it's just an online competitive head-to-head game mode, which is, pretty standard, but adding the Road to the College Football Playoff twist where you hop into the playoff and you have to play, the semifinal and then play the Natty, I think that's pretty cool. So nothing crazy about that game mode. I'm just glad that it's in the game, and I think it's a good thing. Let's move into the mid section. I don't have a ton of specific things to talk about in this category, but I have a few broad things, and the first two are going to be Dynasty and Road to Glory. I think both of these game modes are pretty mid in my opinion. However, I think Dynasty is like upper tier mid, whereas Road to Glory is lower tier mid. So let's talk about Road to Glory first. I made a video talking about things that I was excited about and worried about before the game came out. And one of the things I said that I was worried about was Road to Glory. And not to flex, but I think I absolutely nailed it with my prediction in that video. I basically said that I'm scared that Road to Glory is going to be a little neglected, super bare bones, because they're going to put their focus on other things. And I think that's true. Road to Glory, sure, it's kind of fun, hop into it, control your player, just like you did in 13 and 14 back in the day. But I don't know, man. It's just so bare bones. It was honestly pretty boring for me. Having no high school definitely sucks. There is basically no recruiting process. You just, answer 3 questions and then pick a school. And I think that's a massive missed opportunity, because I think part of the whole excitement about Road to Glory is balling out in high school and then having to figure out which school is the best fit for you and then committing to that school. Like, that should be a really big part of the Road to Glory mode, and it's not. Now, I think it is fair to say that high school in NCAA 14 in some ways was kind of pointless because it was so easy. Like, you were just guaranteed to be a 5-star. Like, you had to intentionally suck to not be a 5-star. I do think that's fair. I would have loved to see high school back in the game, except make it more challenging. Or at least just if you're playing on freshmen, it's really easy. And if you're playing on Heisman, it's really hard, just like when you're playing the college games. I was hoping they were going to expand on Road to Glory and even let you play more than 1 year of high school. Maybe you also play your junior year. Maybe you play all 4 years if you want to. So again, big missed opportunity in my opinion. Once you actually get into the meat of the game mode where you're in college and you're making decisions and you're playing, again, it just feels like it's lacking depth and immersion. It's super bare bones. The decision making where you have to balance your weekly agenda truly isn't that hard. You just basically make sure you're not about to go academically ineligible, or if you're not, too banged up from the wear and tear, you should be good, right? And then there's really annoying things with Road to Glory, like when you call extra plays and it basically just gives you the exact same 3 plays. Like, what's the point of extra plays if I don't actually get extra plays? Or you can't even call an audible. Like, little things like that, it's like, it's not fun, I'd rather just play something else. Now, I think it's good that you can put your player into Madden, continue the career. That's pretty cool. I also think the player customization, for the most part, there's a lot of different options with helmets and different gear you can wear, which is good. But for the most part, this mode is seriously lacking. I consider putting it in the bad for this game, but I feel like that was a little too harsh, so it is mid in my opinion, but lower tier mid, because I'm about to talk about Dynasty here in a second, but I think Dynasty is significantly better than Road to Glory, even though I'm putting them both in the mid section. Okay, so let's talk about Dynasty now, and again, like I just said, I think Dynasty is significantly better than Road to Glory. I didn't think Dynasty quite deserved the good category, but I didn't think Road to Glory quite deserved the bad category, which is why I'm making the distinction that I think Dynasty is clearly a step above Road to Glory. So I've already talked about recruiting and that I think it is good, which that completely changes everything for Dynasty mode, because if recruiting was bad, then Dynasty mode would probably be bad. I do think recruiting is good, and like I said, I almost considered putting Dynasty in the good section. So why did I not put Dynasty in the good section, and instead I have it here in the mid section? The main reason is the lack of depth and immersion, similar to Road to Glory, and then on top of that, there's a lot of bugs in this game mode. Probably the number one thing I see people complaining about Dynasty mode is that the stats recording and like the history to go back and look at previous national champions and previous Heisman winners and like all your previous stat leaders just doesn't exist. And then even more than that, like, why can I go back and look at my team from 5 years ago and just look at the stats? Let me look at the record, let me look at the players and what they did. Like, we used to have that back in the day with the old NCAA football games. We used to have that, and now we don't. And I see a lot of people specifically on Reddit saying how disappointing that is, because that's kind of like the whole point of Dynasty mode. Like, it's supposed to be this whole alternate universe where you can get immersed inside of, and you have players that you get connected to. And even though you're playing in the year 2035, you want to go back and look at the year 2029 and see what your quarterback did or what your linebacker did, right? Like, that stuff is important. That's what makes the game mode so fun. There's also no trophy case, which I've seen a lot of people disappointed in. So again, like the historical data for Dynasty mode, and I'm not talking about real life historical data, I'm talking about the fictional historical data that is created as you play Dynasty mode. So again, if you're 20 years into Dynasty, I should be able to look at the past 20 years of fictional players and see what they did, right? Again, that is lacking and missing in this game. As I said as well, there are a lot of bugs. They fixed a lot of them with the last update. I was getting really annoyed that I couldn't schedule visits with my recruits. They fixed that, but they introduced new bugs, such as freshmen not showing up in the change position task. When you go to do that, they just don't show up. So you have to go to each individual player to change their position, and then it resets their overall. So that's just completely broken. And they already put out an update to fix it for online dynasties, but not for offline dynasties. They said they have to wait to the next title update. I'm not entirely sure why, but that really does suck. So there's lots of little bugs like that. The last reason I did not put Dynasty in the good category is because of the sim logic, which they did address in the last title update. The playoff ranking is significantly better, but it's still not great in my opinion. And I think the biggest issue with the sim logic is that you still see really good teams losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to too frequently. Like, obviously upsets are a staple of college football. That's what makes college football so fun. But you shouldn't see Alabama and Georgia and Michigan consistently losing to bad teams. And then on top of that, also the super sim logic when you actually hop into a game, but then you start simming some plays, that is also very broken. Like, I'll be up 3 scores with 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and I just decide to sim it and then I'll lose. Like, I don't see how the CPU is scoring 3+ scores in 3 minutes. So overall, I think Dynasty is fun and enjoyable. If you want to consider it as good, I do not hate that take at all. I think it is missing and lacking just a little too many things for me to put it quite in the good category, but I think it's right underneath that in the mid category. But like I said, upper tier, close to good. I think the recruiting for the most part is good. The college football playoff is super fun in the game. I'm so glad they implemented the transfer portal. That's also a super cool new feature that's in College Football 25. Obviously, that wasn't around in real college football back when NCAA 13 and 14 were games. I know some people wish the transfer portal was implemented a little differently, but I think for the first game with the transfer portal, it's a good addition. I also want to mention that I really like the new coach abilities between recruiter and motivation and tactician, and being able to basically expand your skill tree and take different paths to becoming a good coach. It's super cool, and I think it's a great improvement from the skill tree we had in NCAA 14. So at the end of the day, Dynasty mode is Dynasty mode, right? Like, you probably are taking a smaller team and taking them to glory and winning a national championship. Or maybe you're a fan of a bigger team and you haven't seen them win a natty in a long time, like Tennessee, Nebraska, right? And you take them back to glory. So in that sense, it's fun. Like, it's fun to recruit, build up your team, and go win football games. But I think it is lacking in a lot of the depth and immersion. I think areas could be a lot better. I've already mentioned several of those. One I did not mention is customization, which we will get into here in a second in the bad section. But I think both the Road to Glory and Dynasty are mid. But like I said, Dynasty is definitely better than Road to Glory. But I think you can see the reason I say both of these are mid is because of the lack of depth. And so that overall for the game is going to be an issue. The immersion and the depth in this game, I consider putting in the bad. I'm going to put it in the mid section. The reason I'm not going to put it in the bad section is because they built this game from the ground up and they did so many different things. That, like I said, the atmospheres are awesome. They did Dynasty mode, they did recruiting, Road to Glory, Ultimate Team, Road to the College Football Playoff. And so when you compile all of that into one game, for the first time in 11 years, and they have, like 3 years to make it, I understand why there's some things that are lacking. So when you look at it that way, you could make the argument that this game is pretty in-depth, like it touches a lot of areas, and I get that. Like, I think it does touch a lot of different areas of college football, and they did a good job if you look at it as a building block, as the cornerstone for this video game franchise. But when you just look at it on its own and you dive into the game, it's definitely lacking in immersion and depth overall for this video game, which is why I have it in the mid category. Finally, let's hop into the bad category. First up, let's talk about the offensive line blocking. My last video specifically talked about this subject, and I said earlier in this video that the one big issue I did have with gameplay is the offensive line blocking. In my opinion, it is very bad. There are times an offensive lineman goes to block a defender and they just bump. The defender doesn't get blocked. He speeds past them, teleports to the quarterback and gets a sack. So that is simply the game not working as intended, and I think that needs to be addressed and fixed. Now, there are also times when a defender makes a move and gets past an offensive lineman. Obviously, that is working as intended, but I think sometimes it just happens too frequently. Like you can watch in this Penn State-Oklahoma game, there are times I am seriously under duress. I'm constantly under pressure, and it feels like the defensive linemen are getting to me super quick, and I have the Oklahoma offensive line, right? Like this should be a pretty solid offensive line. Yes, sometimes it is a skill issue, and yes, sometimes I need to adjust the offensive line before I snap the ball. But sometimes the offensive line simply not blocking. Screens in this game do not work half the time. Like I cannot get a halfback screen off half the time because the defensive line is just in my face. Play action is very, very bad. If you do play action in this game, at least in my opinion, I'm getting sacked like 80% of the time. So I think that's like the one thing holding gameplay back, even though I do think gameplay is good. But the offensive line blocking in this game is very bad in my opinion. I think it needs to be fixed, and if it was fixed, I think the gameplay literally is like an A or an A+. I've also already mentioned the stats recording as well as the simulation logic in Dynasty mode. I think both of those things are bad. They definitely need improvement in my opinion, and it's seriously hurting Dynasty mode. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that when you go to the Heisman watch, you can't even see the season stats for the Heisman contenders. You can only see their previous game. So just again, like, why can we not see the actual stats for these players? It's just not a good system for how they record stats. I won't dive into those again since I've already talked about them, but they definitely fall here in the bad category. I think one of the most obvious things that I've seen people complaining about that falls here in the bad category as well is the customization in this game. And the fact that we have Team Builder, which I put in the good category, yet customization overall is still falling in the bad category, shows just how bad the customization in this game is. And we knew going into this game that the customization was going to be limited because we have real players, and EA obviously doesn't want to get sued again like they did in the past, which is why the college football video games went away in the first place. But EA talked about how they had a system in place to prevent players from creating real players that opted out of the game. So that implied that you could create non-real players, right? But you can't. Like, there's the system in place to prevent you from creating real players is simply don't allow them to create any players. So there's no create a player, there's no create a prospect. For some reason, we can't even edit the fictional players. Like, once you're 10 years into Dynasty, every single player is fake. But for some reason, I still can't change their numbers or their names. Like, it doesn't really make any sense. I understand EA is being cautious, but in this area, it feels like it's just overly limited for no reason. There's other things like not being able to edit the size of the playoff, which I was really hoping we could do, especially because when they were first creating this game, the 14 playoff was still in place. So I was hoping at the very least we were going to have the 14 playoff and the 12 team playoff. Unfortunately, we only have the 12 team playoff, and you cannot change that. When it comes to creating a new coach, you have a ton of faces to choose from, but then you only have the option of wearing a polo, or I think like a pullover jacket looking thing. It's weird that they even let you do that, because you go to edit your coach thinking you're going to have a ton of different options to choose from, and then there's literally only 2 options. It's like, might as well just have none, right? Might as well just make me wear a polo or make me wear the jacket, because it's not that crazy that I can only pick between the 2. Like if there were like 5+ options, 10+ options, then it would make sense. I know that's not a big deal, but again, it's one of those things with customization, it just seems like it's seriously lacking. We did get custom conferences, which is huge, but other than that in Team Builder, it's like the customization in this game is pretty bad. I'm hoping this is an area they improve in the next game. I would love to see a stadium creator at some point. That would be absolutely insane. But for now, this is definitely in the bad category. The last big thing I have in the bad category is the commentary. The commentary got so incredibly hyped up for this game. We have 2 commentary teams, which is awesome. But besides that, the commentary is really bad. And it's just annoying because, like I said, this was hyped up to be such an amazing thing, and then it wasn't. I think Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit are definitely the worst of the 2 teams. I think Reese Davis, Jesse Palmer, and David Pollock are a pretty solid team, actually. But still, the commentary is lacking. I don't know why it's also so delayed. It's like every time I do something, they don't get excited or respond to the play until like 3 or 4 seconds after. I've said it before, but they also just say things that are inaccurate, Like they'll say right down the middle for a field goal where you like almost hit the post, stuff like that. Like it's just not realistic. On game-winning plays like Hail Marys or field goals that win the game, there's like no excitement from the commentary team. And you would think with AI nowadays, they could like implement that to make the commentary more realistic so that the commentators say the correct things that make sense in the context of the game, and that they are excited at the right times. But that's definitely not the case with this game because, like I said, the commentary is very bad. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, after this last title update, I feel like the difficulty of this game is a lot easier, which makes sense that they adjusted that because I know a lot of people were complaining that the game was too hard. But now I feel like it's too easy, and I didn't mind how hard it was before. I had issues with the bugs and some of the glitches, but the actual challenging difficulty of the game, like Heisman was super challenging and super difficult, which I enjoyed. Like I liked having to try really hard to win a game, but now on Heisman, I feel like I'm winning pretty easily, so I'd love to see that adjusted. If you're looking for a review about Ultimate Team, I'll be honest, I've barely even touched that game mode. It doesn't interest me that much, just based on EA's track record with that game mode. I've heard from other people that it's pretty fun, that right now it's not really pay to win. My guess is that will change in the future. But I will say that EA said Dynasty was the focus of this game and that Ultimate Team was not gonna make them neglect Dynasty or anything like that. And I will say that's true. That's 100% true. Dynasty definitely clearly has the most focus and attention for College Football 25. So that's definitely a good thing. Okay, so that's basically everything I wanted to talk about in this official review. If I had to rate this game on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10. I think it's a solid game, a decent game, but not a great game, but also not a bad game. I've seen people say this is like the best game ever. I've also seen people say this is the worst game ever. I don't think it's either of those things, obviously. It's somewhere in the middle. If you have not bought this game and you're wondering if you should, I would say probably yes. I mean, it's the first college football game we've gotten in 11 years, so it's hard to say no, don't buy this game. However, if you're not like, oh, I really, really want this game, I really want to play this college football game, then maybe just wait till CFB 26. I do think this is a good cornerstone game that they can build upon, that this is a good foundational game. So I think there's a good chance CFB 26 is a lot better game, that they take a big step forward. But you already know those Black Friday and holiday deals are coming up, so maybe you can get a pretty good deal on CFB 25. If you're also wondering, is this game better than like NCAA 14 or maybe even NCAA 13? Again, it's hard to say that it's not, because this game is 11 years newer than NCAA 14, 12 years newer than NCAA 13. So when you're comparing a game that's over a decade old to a brand new game, like it's hard to say the brand new game isn't better. But I will say, I think when NCAA 14 was a new game, that it was better in its time versus College Football 25 in its time. So if you compare them in the context of when they came out, I would probably say 14 and 13 are better than 25. However, if you're just comparing them straight up, then College Football 25 is the better game. Or at least that's how I would describe it in my opinion. So again, I would probably say this is like a pretty solid game, 7 out of 10. Definitely not the best game ever, definitely not the worst game ever. Thank you for watching. Follow me on Instagram at BringNCAA Back. Follow me on Twitter at TubbyLight, and then subscribe here for more videos just like this one.